That on TV too?
Did you look at it already?
Yeah.
Oh. There we are. Looking snappy.
All right. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, October 21st, 2013. With our first item on the agenda at 6:30 will be executive session. Do I hear a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21, subsection A, Clause 3, to convene in executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, since an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board, and to convene an open session thereafter.
Selectman Carr?
Aye.
Selectman Brownson?
Aye.
Aye. Selectman Knox?
Aye.
Selectman McCurdy?
Aye.
Okay, we are in executive session.
When will you learn to shut them off? That's what I.
Jim is here too.
Right. Good evening. We are now reconvened in open session for the Board of Selectmen's meeting for October 21st, 2013. We would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance when everybody gets in here.
And everybody.
That's everybody? Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Tonight, in a few minutes, the Vice Chair will be taking over the chair for me as I have to leave tonight. We'll go first with read mail, we'll take public input, and we'll have some updates from members. Then we go to the request, Highway Department, Conservation Commission, and the Oak Hill Trust have requests. At 7:30, we're scheduled to talk about the special town meeting preparations. At 8 o'clock, the fire chief has an update for the fire station. At 8:15, we're scheduled for the town administrator and the assistant town administrator for finance and budget. And then at 8:45, the selectmen are going to review their regulations and policies. At 9 o'clock, we have the consent agenda. So with that, Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back, Pete. Thank you. First item included in the packet is an update on Planting Hope, which had expressed interest in a potential cultivation site in Littleton for medical marijuana. And just to share for the record here that Planting Hope has indicated to town officials that they are no longer interested in pursuing a cultivation site. They had selected two locations which frankly were much too close to schools, and they were, I think, dissuaded from pursuing either of those. That's one. Now, since then, just in fact earlier today, we received word from another applicant, which is Middlesex Integrative Medicine, through their representative from Beacon Strategies Group, proposing yet another site, in this case 265 Foster Street, the Egg Rock site, located near the Littleton commuter rail station. And what I would suggest is, since we had offered Planting Hope the opportunity to come and attend a public meeting, joint public meeting of this board, Planning Board and Board of Health, so that we could have an understanding of what their application involved, and where Planting Hope ultimately did not take advantage of that because they decided not to come here, where this one seems to be still interested, I would suggest that we offer them the same and schedule a public hearing, or public meeting rather, on that. Looking at the calendar, the only date in the near future that I could suggest is next Tuesday. But the applications are due November 21st at DPH, and so sometime prior to November 21st would make sense. And with the board's permission, I'll extend the invitation to schedule a joint public meeting. And
Board of Health?
And yeah, Board of Health, they meet Tuesdays, and the Planning Board as well. We may have some logistics to do on dates, but at least for the next 2 weeks, looks like the only open night is next Tuesday. So, unless we don't go to a game 6 or 7.
Because it's this week.
So,
Okay, so
but I
the
think
29th.
it would be well to schedule the meeting because, folks have concerns about meetings that are taking place
Would
outside
that
the
be the only
public.
thing on the agenda, or do we have a regularly
We
scheduled?
don't, our next regular meeting after tonight is November 18th.
Okay.
We have a meeting on November
19th.
4th, 19th, that's right.
Because Monday Night
of the-
Football.
Because of the Patriots, right. So,
That was not my vote.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
That's-
That's a long-standing tradition.
yeah, we have a,
Selectmen.
we'll have a brief meeting on Monday, November 4th, just prior to
Right.
the town meeting, but
It's not
this
appropriate to do
would,
that.
this would need its own.
Next Tuesday, it's, if we could do it earlier, like a 6 o'clock start, the game probably won't start till late if it goes further. If we don't sweep them.
Yeah, Tuesday's
Oh my
not the night.
gosh.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
I gotta coach soccer.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
So
what is that?
why don't I
what does that mean
I'll work out some dates and see what works for the Board of Health and the Planning Board and the applicant as well, and we'll,
then? And make sure people know that it's a preliminary hearing.
yeah, it's a preliminary meeting so that we, just
So
as we
listen to
heard
the
some
applicant.
information from the applicant
Have
back in
the law
Leave your
August,
voices at home.
first one,
Exactly.
we'd like to get some more information about this. This one
Don't,
is,
yeah,
is,
let's not sneak
it's
anything
just,
else on the
it's just
agenda.
new information we
Good
got.
point,
today.
Mr. Chairman. Good
No.
point.
What's that?
Don't sneak.
Don't try to
anything
sneak
else
anything
on
else
the
in
Oh,
on
no,
that.
no,
agenda.
no.
I mean, it's all up to me, it's all up to me anyway, I guess.
Well, you
so.
never know what, but we'll.
All right,
we'll
let's just
do
see.
that. Okay.
Anything you sneak in will be vetoed. I have the line item veto on
Right.
that.
So we'll proceed with that. Next is, in the packet, is a letter of withdrawal of an application for earth removal. This was actually, we invited this withdrawal from Richard Halloran. This is for 370 Harwood Ave. We convened a hearing about a month ago, continued it until tonight, in fact, and this board asked town council to rule on whether, based on the facts of the application that we had at the hearing, it required the earth removal permit. The ruling was it did not. If he could assure us that soil and loam would not be removed, which he has so indicated, so it's withdrawn. We'll also keep an eye on the property, make sure that there's no soil or loam being removed. Next, we have a request which we can act on at our next regular meeting. It's from Onyx Corporation, who's doing the work out on 119, the Great Road roadway and traffic improvements. We will have change orders that we'll need to bring to you at that time. The specific request is to extend their contract from the end of November through next May. That won't.
Doesn't impact
that won't
any
be
of
a
the
problem.
fiscal
No.
issues with the state money?
No, we've already spent all the state,
Okay.
money by last
So this is
June.
the Sam Park money where?
This is Sam's
Okay.
money that we've deposited in our account, and we will be needing a few more dollars from Sam to cover the change orders that we'll bring
I
in
guess it's not
on
on.
November 19th. Okay, next we have several town board resignations that wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge and thank for their service. Barbara McCray from the Housing Committee. It's kind of getting very busy, and Barbara, who's very busy herself with a lot of things, saw that this maybe, we should be overextending ourselves, but appreciate her efforts. Mary Dugan, who was until recently the chair of the Council on Aging, has resigned from that board after a number of years on the board, so we thank her for her service. We also have resignations from two members of the Littleton Common Sewer Feasibility Committee, Warren Terrell and Steve
Yonley.
Young, and thank them for their service as well. All will get the letters that we send out to board members. And lastly, in the packet, we have a letter from the Littleton Common Sewer Feasibility Study Committee with their letter to the Selectmen indicating that they feel they have fulfilled their obligations to date and fulfilled their mandate as directed by the Selectmen. It would be my recommendation that at our future meeting, we schedule this item for an agenda discussion and figure out what the next steps are and what, with the study and what actions, if any, would be taken up by us, by the town administration in order to pursue whatever other issues the board would like to pursue. So that's the update on the mail packet.
Okay, thank you. Now we can move to public input. Is anybody who has anything to add for or state for the board?
Am I gonna be?
No, you're an agenda item.
You won't put them, Joe.
You're an actual
You're on the
agenda.
schedule.
You're an actual agenda item,
Okay.
You're very important,
so.
very important.
All right,
Check your marks.
with that, we'll go around the table for any board member updates. Alex?
No, I have nothing.
Joe?
A couple of things, like you just mentioned, I do want to thank the people who donated their time to the sewer committee. That was like 2.5 years of work, and so Mr. Yonley, Mr. Terrell, and of course Mary Dugan. I think it was 7 years that she served on the Council on Aging, and certainly thank her. Some other things that are happening around town, I don't know if Kurt can put it up now, but coming up in the month of November,
Nope.
There it is.
there it is, the Apple Smash, November 9th. If you see the posters actually say the Boxborough Host Hotel. It's been like 20 years since it's been called that. It's the Boxborough Holiday Inn, but it's a silent end, regular kind of auction. There's a live band being played and other things that are going on. All the profit from that goes to the 300th, Friends of the 300th, which eventually goes to the 300th celebrations. So I thank Herb for that. Last thing also has to do with the 300th celebration that's going on. On November 14th at 7 o'clock at the NEPA building, is that, how is that?
NEPA.
NEPA. We're having our second public hearing so everyone can see what the different committees are doing. Some of the committees will actually have PowerPoint presentations so people can see exactly what's going on. I know that since I'm on the parade committee, I have seen the PowerPoint presentation has grown. You'll be able to see all the different bands and floats that are going in, so that's pretty exciting too. So that's November 14th at 7 o'clock. If you have that chance, I'd like to invite the public down to take a look and see all the work that's being done in preparation for next year.
And the NEPA building is, did you announce where that is? Down behind the,
Right
behind
the Kerpa soccer field.
yeah.
Wasn't named after me.
May I add a point on this? The new banner location exclusively for the use of the 300th committee for next year will go live tomorrow. With two banners, with the 300th banner will be unfolded as well as the Apple Smash banner.
I saw the polls going up today.
And we have both delightful banners that will be going up tomorrow, and they'll look delightful. We'll see how long they last. Well, the 300th does.
All right. Jenna?
My colleagues might have seen, and I'm thanking Jen for using pink because it's October. Thank you for that. Harvard Road, where I live, as does Mr. McCurdy, and I'm sure Mr. Knox travels on Harvard Road, is fantastic. Thank you. And trick or treat for all of us who have children is Thursday the 31st from 5:30 to 8.
Great.
Congratulations to the football team, the high school football team, 6-0, beat Maynard last Friday. And they're on a roll,
Right, number
so,
one.
yeah, really good.
I'd like to mention a sweep that the police department took, and Chief Kelly, I didn't anything that I missed, but I believe there was a age verification sweep in the last week, and that we had 100% compliance with all licensees in town, and I think that's a credit to the licensees and also to your department for the work that we've done with our beverage control officers and the active role that the town is taking. So I'd like to congratulate yourself and your department and all the licensees on that. One other item I'd like to talk about a little bit here is when I was given the chair here back in May, I talked about how there's some animosity and some attacks and some bad conversations going between boards here, and I called upon this board to be the leader in that and to set the example, and I'm proud to say that over the last 5 months, I believe we've continued to set the example of how boards should behave, and I think we do a great job. And you know, the attacks that we've sustained since then include letters to the editor, we've had letters sent to this board, and recently we've had board members verbally attacked out in the parking lot following a meeting, and it by the public would be one thing, but when it's other board members, That's really just, I guess disgraceful is really only the word I can use, and I'd like to congratulate this board for taking the high road, and thank you for setting the example of how to work in town. With that, I'd like to move on to requests, if there's any, unless there's anything else from board members. Okay, and the first request is for from the highway, the plowing and sanding of private ways. Jim Clyde has given us his submittal for this year, and there's one road that fell out of compliance with the policy. The policy does state that for one house on a private street, when it changes hands, that they are no longer they are now no longer eligible for the plowing. That address is Foss Place. It was sold, and there are 2 houses on the street, and they did not respond to requests to put an application in. Is that a correct summary? Correct. So that should stay off. There is, or should drop off the list. There is one other street that I'd like to bring up, and Jimmy, if you have anything else to add, feel free, but it's the Neshoba Day Camp. You know, the policy also states that roads shall be open to the public. When you drive down that road, it is a clear, large sign that says, private way, no trespassing, and there is also a gate, which I believe the gate was locked, that didn't allow access for you to inspect at least one time. Is that correct?
My foreman went to do the inspections, he couldn't get in.
Okay. So I'd like to take Neshoba Road, and whoever makes the motion can determine whether to include it or not, but I think it should be off the list because it doesn't comply with the policy. I have my other opinions on the policy, everyone knows where I am, so if we could go around the board, if anybody wants to add anything, and if not, we'll move to a board. Move to a vote. Jim?
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to its August 28, 2000 policy on plowing, sanding, private ways to approve the list of roads as recommended by Highway Operations Manager Jim Clyde in his report dated October 17, 2013 as follows. Approved without further conditions, Bar Place, Countryside Road, Deer Run Road, Great Road numbers 504 to 512, Green Needles Road, Neshoba Woodland section, Green Needles Road back half, Hidden Wood Path, Oak Ridge Road, Omega Way, Robin Hood Road, Rock Place, Silver Birch Lane, Whitcomb Ave, 139 to 149, and Winged Cove Road. Approved subject to conditions set forth by the Highway Operations Manager, Barron Way, Cricket Lane, Star Hill, and Whispering Pine Drive. No services further for Foss Place in accordance with policy paragraph number 9.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
You didn't mention the Neshoba Road.
I know.
Okay, so we're not gonna take it off, just drop it.
Not
There's a
Neshoba
motion.
Road.
Okay.
Neshoba Day Camp, is that
Yeah,
right?
Neshoba Road, Neshoba Day Camp, yeah.
No, not Neshoba Road.
Right,
Right, Neshoba Day Camp.
okay. Motion been made and seconded. All those in,
Can I clarify, I just want to make sure, what was left off is Neshoba Day Camp. Neshoba Road is included, right?
Correct. These are the private roads which would no longer.
What's the
that
diff- yeah,
Neshoba would
explain
no
the difference.
longer. This 140 Neshoba Road.
That's their address.
That's their address.
Neshoba Road.
Okay.
But Neshoba Road is not in question. I mean, that's
Right,
a
it's a
public
road.
way.
Public way.
Yeah, so Neshoba 140, okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
it just reads.
yeah. Motion been made and seconded to approve the list of private ways. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying nay. Nay. Thank you very much. Mr. Vice Chairman, I will give you the chair as I have 2 kids to go home and put to bed.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks. See you.
Moving on the Conservation Commission, I think we all have the pleasure to.
Want to scoot together? A little closer, Joe. Come on, Jim, slide over. We can all fit on one camera fan.
That's why I'm not doing it.
A while ago, Mr. Peter Tanny resigned from the Conservation Commission. In the meantime, we've had some applications, and we're happy to report that Mr. Tanny would love to rejoin the Conservation Commission, and I think, well, no one's ever going to have a problem with that, but if it's okay, I'd like to turn over to you if you want to have any statements to be made, Mr. Tierney.
Although I'm subjected to diminished capacity in various areas, I'm glad to come back. I talked with Sarah Seawood, and apparently the large blocks of land have been already somewhat dealt with. I left last year because I could not really move around over large areas without having people help me, and that was kind of upsetting. But given individual houses, septic system problems and all that, I can deal with that. And so I'm happy to come back and contribute to the Conservation Commission. I wouldn't have done this except that people on the commission asked me to reconsider and come back. And it's somewhat embarrassing because I have a path named for me, over which I walk daily. No. But,
You're still walking.
so I'll do the best I can.
Well, we can take that name off it now. and put it back on.
The sign was put up with Velcro.
So I wish to contribute, so I should be okay.
Fantastic. Any other comments from the board?
Welcome back.
Glad to have you back, Mr. Tierney.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to
Good
talk to
news.
you and see you.
Thank you.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Town Code subsection 8-4, appoint Peter Tierney to the vacancy on the Conservation Commission expiring June 30, 2015.
It's been moved and seconded, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Congratulations.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Do I have to
Go
sign
and-
anything?
No, you just have to swear at the town clerk.
So I can come up tomorrow, the next day, and,
You bet.
okay.
Thank you, Mr.
And he didn't really need to
Thank you.
swear.
Huh?
Yeah.
He didn't really need
Take
to
that
swear.
literally.
I know a lot of swears.
Thank you.
Right. Next on the agenda is right of first refusal for Chapter 61A dealing with land that's owned by the Sanderson family. I think the parcels are, in question are actually on Oak Hill Road. Keith, if you want to.
Yeah, we had received a notice on September 18th pursuant to Chapter 61A, which gives us, gives the town right of first refusal to acquire the property within a 120-day window. Now, that would require that a town meeting vote be taken within 120 days, or in this case by January 16, 2014, to acquire the property. A year ago, this board voted not to exercise the right of first refusal on two other lots in this same tract of land. It was lots 1A and 2A shown on the same approval not required plan you have before you tonight. In that case, the property totaled about 2 acres, and the two lots had a sale price of $304,000. These two lots now are about the same configuration, 2.02 acres. The sale price for them is $316,000. The observations that were made a year ago were that while the property is listed in the open space plan as a desired acquisition, the fact that we don't have a lot of funds to expend for acquisitions led to the decision not to exercise the right of first refusal. So the situation we were in then, we're in and there's still many acres remaining. There's another 52.72 acres that remain under 61A, and if any of those parcels become subject of sales, that those would also come for right of first refusal.
Okay. Comments from the board?
This is 2 lots further towards Harvard than the 2 that are there.
No comments, wait a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote not to exercise the town's right of first refusal under Mass General Law 1661A, Section 14, to acquire lots 3A and 4A as shown on the approval not required plan for Sanderson property, Oak Hill Road, totaling 2.02 acres, for a bona fide offer of $316,000.
Second.
Any discussion, further discussion? If not, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
Moving right along, talking about the November 4th special town meeting, the board has discussed almost all the articles except for 2. Keith, you want to lead into
Yeah,
that?
we have a report on one of those 2 articles, Article 6, which was submitted by Light and Water. And we have with us Augustino's to bring us the sad news that it was a nice try.
Yeah,
but-
as I said in my, when we came here before, we had the cart from the horse, and we had to have the cart from the horse as we do in what was called a performance feasibility study. And currently, due to the steep slopes of the landfill primarily, and the landfill cap being very sensitive, the cost for the ballast for the preliminary analysis of the cost of the ballast for the solar panels is significantly greater than expectation, added $1 million to the project. So it takes it out of the reasonableness in terms of making it cost effective, even when we combine both programs, that being the peaking unit as well as the solar array. There wouldn't be any value to lease the property, and obviously there's a limit on that. So we decided to back off that now. We'll continue to work at that, both at that site, also on other sites. But for now, we've withdrawn the article, and that 3-party agreement will not be going through at this time, and everything's status quo in terms of the way monies are handled for the cell towers at all.
Looks like I picked a good one to comment on at town meeting, huh?
Somebody else?
That was mine.
And I
Well
have
played.
given an update as well,
Bills are brave.
although we haven't exercised Article 6, the option of Article 6, this week, in fact today, the 4-megawatt solar array at Distribution Way has gone online, and as of 10 o'clock this morning, we had about 3 megawatts of output, so because it's such a nice day today, we reduced that demand by 3 megawatts, and so that'll be a positive thing for the town, even though we don't own it, we just receive, leaving the ratepayers receiving the full output. It is a resource of the town, and it's a resource of the town from within the community, so it still has a significant amount of value, and you can always drive down there and look at it from afar. And we're looking at those kinds of options for other renewables and sustainable energy.
So do you think the old landfill site is completely off the table, or are you going to try to find
It's not
another?
completely off the table, it is right now, but it doesn't mean that there are, I spoke with a consultant today who gave me a call, and although our consultants did a good feasibility study, he says that the panels are getting lighter and moving landfills, and the landfill has built and moved, if you will, the ballast they're putting in are much lighter and much thinner because the landfill, the solar panels are getting thinner and lighter, so there are options that are, and the price is coming down. But as I said in my email to you folks as well, that the other thing that we're fighting is that with our low rates, the margins are very, very tight for the ratepayers. And then when you add the fact that being a municipality, we are getting a 30% tax reduction as well as an aggressive depreciation on it. Those are things that a developer has. So when their target is 16 cents, it's something you can reasonably do. When your target's 10 cents, without the tax incentives, without the aggressive depreciation allowance that the federal tax allow, it becomes a very, very, very tight margin. We don't want to do something that's going to hurt our ratepayers. And since we are at between 12 and 50% renewables, with the things that are coming online, we have a project that's online now, a small project, IBM, another small project in Middlesex, and a few small homes. And the large one we just did in town, there is a significant amount of in-town solar going in, due to our net metering rate and some incentives we have, although we as a department are not adding any incentives. We have a very low rate, and we have a very aggressive net metering rate, which is full value right now of full value of the rate, as opposed to power supply or as opposed to avoided cost. So if those who are interested in doing it themselves, it is very appealing. There's no money by us, but at the end of the day, when you figure out rate and all the other things, it's still very appealing. A lot of people look at it that way. They believe that if you're not giving me some money to put it in, why should I put it in? But again, the bottom line is high level customer service and low rates, and still, we're going to be at 50% by the end of this year, which will be one of the top renewable, sustainable portfolios in New England, due to all the other resources we have in that portfolio.
Congratulations on that.
So we will continue to play with that option as the market allows us to. But not right now.
Okay.
Thank you for thinking of us, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a neat idea, but
Yes.
Thinking out of the
there was
box.
a
it's good.
detail.
Yeah. Very good.
Thanks, that was, and the second article, Article 10, has to do with the,
With zoning, that the planning board did conclude their public hearing last Thursday on proposed zoning amendments dealing with prohibiting certain automotive sales. I only got, I've seen a draft that town council produced late this afternoon with some amendments that are proposed. They're not in a final form for this board to adopt as a recommendation tonight. I thought they might be. But you
Okay,
could
so
take
add
it
it to
up.
the Tuesday
Yeah.
meeting, one more agenda.
No, you can take it up on
You can
take it up on November 4th at 6:30. You can do it on that.
Half an hour before we go
So-
forward.
But,
Right.
so there's no further action. So we can, we'll,
just quickly on that, I did stay for that portion of the planning board meeting, and I think there were like 7 sections that was dealing with it, and they kept the main concept of eliminating large dealerships, but they took out some of the things, like, it actually said you couldn't have used pot stores and things like that, so some of those things, that'll be in the new version when we finally get it in November 4th. So we're all set with,
So give me one of yours. Give me one of yours. I'll take one.
okay,
Right? Take one. I'll take one.
leave it there so I can
Oh, all
decide.
right.
Brings us up for a fire station update. We have the chief here, if he,
We're very popular.
It's like, at 8?
hi. Do you think
I
so?
wonder if people will be coming for this at 8.
So should we put you off? I hate to do that to you, have to bring you up front, but.
Yeah, we should probably do that.
All right, I'll go
Sorry.
back to the.
But we
We
got,
can zip through some of this stuff.
We can move on to other,
Yeah, we can probably
Sorry.
get item 7.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
yeah.
Okay, financial management policy, we actually talked about this last week, I believe, right? This is just the final.
Yes, you received the policy at our last meeting, and your policy is to read the policy.
My only concern is amendments. Really, are they really amendments? We're not, they're changing the policy. We're not amending it.
Yeah, we had adopted a policy.
An amendment is like an addendum, maybe? No?
Well, there's
New policy,
different language.
updated policy.
Yeah, you adopted the base policy back in February of 2010. And the amendments that were brought forward are highlighted in bold on the attachment. So those are the specific things that are being changed.
Do you prefer the word augmentation? She doesn't know.
Updates, proposed updates.
Actually, don't.
Okay, you ready for a motion? You gonna do it, or you want me to do it?
Go ahead.
All right.
Actually, don't have that.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to adopt the proposed updates to the financial management policy as proposed by the Financial Policy Working Group and introduced on October 7th, 2013.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes. Well, what do you think? The sergeant or the Winter Council?
Sergeant?
We don't have a third yet.
You don't?
Should we go do our procedures?
Okay.
Leave the council.
Yeah.
You can do Labor Council.
Oh, Labor Council. Yeah.
We may go home before everyone shows up. Okay, on Labor Council, the development is that back in February of 2012, the board appointed Copeland and Page as Labor Council. And we designated that Attorney Jack Dolan of Copeland and Page would be the attorney assigned to us to work with us on our bargaining. Attorney Dolan is leaving Copeland and Page as of the end of the month, so the issue arises as to whether the town would prefer to stay with Copeland and Page or go with Attorney Dolan. And there's two ways that we can approach it. One is that it is to, since we tasked a subcommittee back a year or two ago to meet with the firms who were then vying for the appointment, and then the subcommittee came and after having a chance to have conversations, came back with a recommendation which the board acted on. That's one way to go, and there's certainly, I mean, we haven't had any, apart from maybe a phone call or receipt of a letter, that I've not had detailed discussions with either Copeland and Page or Attorney Dolan about what, do I understand what the backup is? Do I understand how the account would be serviced and so on? And if we wanted to go through that step, then convening the subcommittee would be one way to do it. If, on the other hand, the board is prepared to just make a decision, you can also just vote to do that. I think from the staff standpoint that while I'm familiar with a lot of people at Copeland and Page, because I've worked with them for 25 years, that I know that Littleton is familiar with just one attorney in that firm, and that's Jack Dolan, that he is the face of who we've dealt with, he's who all of our unions have dealt with, and is the only member of Copeland and Page's staff that even our own staff has worked with. So it's more of a, I think it's a process question of if we want to take the time to have a discussion with Attorney Dolan and with Copeland and Page, that we ought to task that to a subcommittee. If we don't feel that that step is necessary and feel that a decision can be made, the selection can be made, then we can take a vote tonight.
Do you have a sense as to how Littleton staff feel about Attorney Dolan?
There is, I would say that we all know Jack Dolan and are by and large satisfied with his work, and we know the unions know who Jack Dolan is, and I think I'd generally be concerned about how many changes that we just made a change.
Right.
That and that was a long time in coming, and I'd be hesitant to make the change again, but I'd like to, if we wanted to have a conversation with the attorneys, we could do that.
Having served on both the negotiating team and on the team that went out and met with, 6, 7 different firms? I can't remember now. 6 or 7 different firms. And knowing Jack, dealing with him on the negotiation teams, personally, I think he's right on the target for the town. He represents us well. My only concern is we don't have any rate schedule here. So prior to even taking any vote,
Yeah.
I'd like to see a rate schedule.
Yeah, neither one submitted any
Yeah, so
information.
I would,
And that is certainly something that we can
How
do.
critical, when is his departure?
It's the end of the month.
It's the end of the month.
I told them that,
All right, so Tuesday, the 3rd agenda, right?
well, but it could just as easily be, and I've had this discussion with Copeland and Page, that it could just as easily be that we don't meet until November 4th. And it's just a few days, and then it may be that if the subcommittee did its work and then reported back, that we could do that we could have the board vote on November 4th at 6:30.
Because we're pretty much all set now. Does anyone?
Yeah, there's no active collective bargaining, we've reached all the agreements, we have a couple of administrative cases we're handling, but we're.
It's not going to impact any ongoing
No.
issues?
No. If it had to happen, this was actually a convenient time for us.
I think too, you're asking for the, a salary thing.
Yeah.
I think something else that should be asked of Mr. Dolan is that, who does he have to back him up?
Right.
Yeah,
Copeland and Page had
Yeah.
other attorneys, other people. And
I
what is he
agree.
doing to have that done?
What's his firm look like?
That and being, I mean, the one thing that we experienced with him is his ability to get to some of the stuff when we're busy.
Yes.
And this, it seems to me this might make that a little worse. And I'd like to hear how he plans to do it.
Yeah, could make it worse, could make it easy, could make it easier if he, depending
When
upon
you
how
break
many
out on your own,
clients.
you might be
How many
virtually
clients he's
unemployed.
bringing with him, he may have all sorts of time that he hasn't.
Do not
So it'd be worth having that dialogue with him.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we need
Yeah,
a
I-
subcommittee to do that.
Well, I think that the process that we used before was a useful way for us to be tasked to go out and do it and bring you back.
And I'd be willing to do that too, just to sit down with him and hammer it out.
So if we
So-
could task the subcommittee to bring back a recommendation, I think that would allow us to get the information we need from.
Frankly, I'd be perfectly comfortable if you just went and figured it out and came back and gave us your recommendation.
Well, I could, it would be my recommendation, and I think it might, I found a certain strength from the subcommittee, from it being a joint think of us. I can certainly come back and give you my recommendation, but
Is the subcommittee staff or also? Volunteers.
last time it was Jim, Bonnie, and me, so.
I'm okay with the subcommittee. I mean,
Make a motion?
all right, move that the Board of Selectmen vote as follows relative to the appointment of Labor Council. Task the Labor Council Review Subcommittee to bring back a recommendation on whether to continue with Copeland and Page PC or transfer to Attorney John F. Dolan following interviews with each.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Please play post vote.
Okay, what else can we do?
Yeah, regulations.
Yeah, where'd those things?
Sure, you can wrap those up by 8 o'clock.
So essentially, we need to figure out which ones we want to hit, right? Take a look at it.
We were tasked with going through and looking at these three, correct?
Yeah.
And this is an opportunity for us to make some edits, revisions, enhancements, correct?
That's right. Exactly.
All right.
So is that,
So how do you want to do this?
because then, I read through it, but I didn't have any real statements to make, other than the one I had brought up has to do with, toward the end, recognitions and proclamations. That's a small one that you could work on to make
Which
sure.
one?
The very last page.
I'm looking at
okay.
the, right here. Policy 14, policy and recognition proclamations. I'd like us to work on that. And you and I had talked about that a while, and how we do recognize
Yeah,
people.
like 6 years, 7 years.
Well, you finally have a chance to do something. So that's the one I looked at.
Does this happen? Keith, do you know,
What?
with respect to recognitions and proclamations, does this happen on a regular basis? Where, staff members who are retiring, town employees in 5-year increments are you getting your letter every 5 years, Jim? Thanking you for your dedicated service to our town?
We are not doing that.
Well, we should, and retro ones too. So,
No,
who's in charge of doing this?
It'd be my office that would be charged, because there's
It's
no one
totally
else.
not a criticism of
There's-
Keith.
No, well, there would be no one else that would, I would task it to someone who had a record of the personnel, which would be Ann in Bonnie's office.
Okay.
So once
Since we don't.
passed.
Since we don't have that information.
well done, too.
From the sweeping.
But-
And did we also want some sort of enhancement too, as far as I know that it came up during our goal-setting exercise, the idea of picking sort of a citizen of the year, perhaps, of their service to the town, and have that be an annual award. Did that come up? And if so, it
At one
seems
point
like
it
it
did
should go
come up,
under
yeah.
here.
I think if we could, on this one thing here, if we could, all of us who are interested in it, write down a couple of things they'd like to add on to it, or
Oh, okay.
how to improve it. Something I want to make sure it gets on there that people don't get overlooked who has put in 25 years of service, and we recognize person A but not person B.
A lot of tracking.
Yeah.
That's where we got hung up on before, is do we inadvertently miss somebody?
Right.
Because there's a lot when we added up the numbers of volunteers that are on this town, there's a lot of volunteers and people that are helping out. There's people that are,
Yeah.
they're on the forefront, and there's people way in the background someplace that are
Right.
contributing just as strongly to this town. And that's the hard part about this, is that we don't want to slight anybody, but we need to tackle that, and we need to do it. So,
And it actually happened at a town meeting, and there was nothing against the two people that were recognized, but at the same time, why was it just two, and there probably are others out there that have the same amount of time put in, so
Sure.
we can give our ideas and pass them on to
I mean, we have the employee records, so it's not a problem for us to kind of coordinate and get a reminder system in place, but we don't have the volunteers. So it's gonna take some.
Big database.
Yeah. And
volunteers.
Oh, but they would all start, though, with, as far as appointed volunteers, right? And those of us who are elected, those who are appointed, Diane Corey would have all of those records because of the obligation to
Sworn in.
oath
She would
taking.
have all of the board member, names
Yeah.
and service terms.
Right. So are you, Joe, suggesting that this would also include other folks in town who volunteer? Because they're volunteer board members, right, and employees. This doesn't remark
Are they
upon
committees,
someone's 30 years in garden club. It's not our place to recognize them.
No. Having to do with town government.
Yeah.
If somebody's put a number of years in with the planning board, maybe a couple of years with the board of selectmen, that type of thing, but they have 25 to 30 years of service, and I'd like that person
Yeah.
to be recognized for everything they did. So I don't know how you compile that, though. That's, your records deal with paid employees.
Correct.
Maybe the police.
So it's very easy for us to extract that out of our database. I'm not sure about the town clerk's database and.
We're probably talking about an awful lot of work, because you have to go through year by year to see.
Yeah, I don't know how it's organized in her system, so.
Maybe just start, what we know is what we know, and then just start the database from there. Instead of really, because it can take a lot of time to
Yeah.
go through it.
I think the more people, the other committees, boards, and all that stuff that we involve, the less likely we are to miss somebody. And I don't know, there's got to be a kickoff period of time where we say, okay, it's time for us to recognize individuals of the town, and, where are these people? Who are we nominating? It's not, it is a tough job for you to do. But
So
I forget what the number of
We'll bring
volunteers
this up
was.
again then.
Yeah.
So,
Let's get back to this. Maybe we can go to the police.
Police.
yeah, okay.
Are you gonna come back to this
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
tonight?
tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Well, that's okay.
All right, Chief, up.
Police patrol sergeant. For his chief, do you want to?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate the board expediting this onto your schedule, Mr. Bergman. Thank you for that. We had an unusual circumstance come up on the 9th of October. Patrick O'Donoghue, one of our very good members, decided to give up his rank of sergeant, go back to patrol. He's quite pleased with the decision, so we're all quite pleased for him for making that tough decision and being happy with it. That brought about a promotion that needed to be made. And when we reviewed the possibility to make that promotion, we looked at the process that we had 11 months ago, which ended up in the promotion of Patrick. And we found that the process was still quite valid for current day. And we looked at the department makeup and found that nothing had really changed within the department. In the last process, Ed and Patrick were nose and nose for the promotion at that time, and Patrick was brought forward. I would like to present Ed, I am presenting Ed to the board this evening as a result of that past process for promotion to the rank of patrol sergeant. A couple of things came up. One was that our contract with the patrolmen's union states that we are supposed to post the job for a certain period of time and then conduct a process inside before we go outside. You'll note in your packet that we have an agreement, signed agreement from the union stating that they agree with the decision to bring Ed forward without convening a new process. And that was a unanimous vote by the union. So they are also in support of Ed's promotion. We then had a discussion about the still pending hiring policy that the town is working on. And I introduced a memo to Mr. Bergman. Mr. Bergman brought the subject matter forward to the Personnel Board. Thank you for filling that in. And my understanding is they had a robust conversation, and lacking any definitive policy at this time, they are going to include something to address this within that policy. So with all that said, you have all kinds of information within your packet. I present Ed Boussier to the board for promotion to the position of patrol sergeant.
Comments from the board first.
I think we should hear from the sergeant to be.
Ed, if you want to...
Well,
The floor's yours.
this last couple of weeks has been a roller coaster. I was shocked, and when Pat called me and told me his decision, what he was doing, and so when Chief then offered me the job, obviously I'm excited to take on the position. I've worked hard to get to where I am. You have my resume in front of you, so I don't need to go into that. And I look forward to working with the department as we move forward down the road and being part of that management team and doing my best as I've always tried to do in the 7 years I've been here.
Wood?
I'm good. I'm ready.
Wow.
Quiet? Well deserved.
Just one thing about the process. The Personnel Board did discuss an abbreviated process where the conditions that were existing, we're going to deal with something that happened within a certain period of time. We just haven't come to a conclusion of where that is. So what you did actually falls in line with what we were talking about.
I think your decision falls in line with what I did.
Exactly. Ready there, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I am.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote as follows. One, accept Patrick O'Donoghue's request for voluntary surrender of the rank of patrol sergeant and assume the rank of patrol officer effective immediately. And two, authorize pursuant to its staffing vacancy review policy, the filling of one full-time benefit position of patrol sergeant. And three, to promote Patrolman Ed Boussier to the position of patrol sergeant for the Littleton Police Department.
Second. Thank you, John.
It's seconded twice.
Yes,
Very important.
tripled.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you, fellow members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now for me, I would jump right to the fire station. Okay. Chief, would you like to vote finally? Okay, so the public knows, we're gonna go through a fire station update. The chief's gonna report on some potential sites that he has looked at. And before we get started, Chief, I know that when this first came out, I know it was talked about briefly. My questions during the week to Keith were, I didn't know it had gone this far, so I was learning and going on and all the hard work you have put through, which is gonna help us make decisions in the future, no matter which way it goes. So, Keith, you want to add on?
Yeah, that at our meeting back on September 16th, when the board voted not to bring forward fire station design to the fall town meeting, but rather to delay that decision until the spring, one of the issues that we had identified during the discussion was that at the planning board meeting that had taken place the prior Thursday, there were some excellent questions that were raised about, what alternative sites did the town look at? Did we have a plan that consisted of other than developing the existing site? I have to say, we didn't have great answers to the question. That had been at least 10 years, I think, since we'd done a thorough review of what other town-owned properties that we might have. So we took that as a challenge, really, that these were some legitimate questions that have been raised in the process and that we needed to be able to have answers to had we looked at other sites or not. So the chief, he can talk about his procedure, but we have the tools of town-owned property and to look at potential sites. I frankly didn't think he was going to find one, but he found one, which has all sorts of implications if it were to be considered, which frankly promptly needs some direction from this board before we go much further. So we're happy to have an update from the fire chief tonight.
Thank you. I would say this all began back in, 98, I think when Chief Kelly was investigating location for his station, and that was when they initially spoke of potentially, building another fire station down at that location. Some of the studies that were done at that time deemed that we were better off to remain at the Foster Street location, being a centralized spot for responders to respond, to the station and then therefore off to calls, being in a timely location and not have to dealing with the traffic going through the common. So as we started some of our process at, examining our site and our study and creating design for our current facility on 20 Foster Street, some of the abutters have started to come up and ask, as Keith said, have you looked at any other options? Are there any other sites? So in one of the discussions I had with Keith, he said, go ahead, check it out. So I received a list of town-owned properties from the assessor's office of 54 different parcels. Investigating those parcels, you can see on one of your maps, yep, and the red and the green, that indicates all of the different parcels that were available, ranging from the majority being swampland. We're quite an owner of swampland in this town. The apple orchard, some of the small parks, water department well sites, things of that nature. And they were all 2 acres and larger. You can notice the one location in the middle, the green, that is the Morgan property. The Morgan property is an 80-acre site. It is still, it's town-owned, selectmen run, and potentially available for a site. That location is just a matter of a few hundred yards from the existing fire station, so it's still centrally located and right on the main road, right on King Street. There's a approximately 700-foot road to access the initial site. There's a, in one of your other maps, you can see where Park and Rec had begun to survey it for ball fields. The field that we're looking at is, it says the girls' field. You can actually see an access road that comes up, and then there's that first field, which is about 300 feet by 300 feet, which is very similar to the current site that we're on size-wise. So basically, we're looking at investigating the use of 2 acres out of this 80 that could potentially house the fire station in a neutral location, which if in fact it were to happen, then it may open up additional opportunities for other departments in town for future expansion. Being, say, if the 20 Foster Street location were to come available, Park and Rec, or, maybe one of the other departments may be able to expand and move to that site, allowing for additional expansion here in Town Hall, maybe for the COA or something to that effect. So it would have a little bit of a ripple effect. I think at this point, with looking at our existing site and being limited to that, it is kind of a nice option. Would show it would have some available space for expansion in the future, and it would take us away from the element of constantly being at the park and being involved with the church and the church parking and some of that nature. So I mean, there are several options available as far as the use of both sites. I think they would both do just fine. Obviously, there is a few more options if we were to expand onto the Morgan property. A few other options on that property, if we were to expand there, we would basically be able to start a facility from scratch on a concrete pad. We'd have the ability to tie into the sewer system because it runs right by the end of the road. It would, again, it's something that we could potentially expand into with a Park and Rec, and maybe if we were to take up the cost of the infrastructure for the roadway, they would still be able to potentially build their ball fields up in the second portion, or something of that nature. There are many options. Maybe it remains as for potential conservation use, or something of that nature.
Okay. What was the architect's comment to this?
I spoke with him Friday evening, and his initial, our current project is 6.6, and he is estimating this to be about 6.9, including infrastructure to go in.
Infrastructure, not including road.
Including road.
Including roads.
Yes,
So essentially, the road is the cost difference.
correct. By starting off on a new site, there's a little less cost in basically doing the renovation portion of it, where he was talking about putting the front portion of the structure, it could be brick, something that's appealing, and then having the whole garage bay an all-steel structure, potentially off the back, so as you drove up the front portion, the main building that you would see would be brick, and then everything behind that would be all garage space. He said there would be significant savings in cost on that, something to that effect, as well as starting from scratch. We're not just dealing with putting the additions up against the renovation and going for the match-up and things of that nature.
I mean, the concerns for the Morgan property has always been ball fields. It might, 300,000 for a road, but then you gotta take into the fact, whoever or whatever happens to the Foster Street property is gonna be millions of dollars to rehab that for any type of use. So you need to add that into your equation too, in my eyes. Because that cost of renovations for that existing site, whether it be for park and rent, or council on aging, or anybody, needs to be factored in here also. So when you do this, and you come to a formal presentation, if you're really pushing for this Morgan property, I would ask that those considerations for that Foster Street site have a line in there. How much is that gonna cost the town to do that too?
Well, with all due respect, this would be, I mean, a presentation for me to bring forward for a fire station facility.
Yep.
If they, decided to put like the 20 Foster Street facility on hold for a period of time, that may be, that may be a tough number to plan on, depending on which department were to go into that location and what their usage may be. If it were park and rec, maybe they would be able to use, the garage spaces, classroom, and do minor modifications, but that's kind of a big unknown unless somebody decides to put invest some money into a study for a different type of a use.
I think it still needs to be part of the equation personally. And if it means you sitting down with the Park and Rec, has the Park and Rec seen anything about the fields, and what does the commission feel about you taking up the fields that we've been hearing for the past 10 years, 5 years, we need more fields, we need more fields, we need more fields. And now we're kind of throwing a monkey wrench into that. I think, they should be brought into it, and I'd like to hear their opinion also.
Yep, I spoke with Kate on Friday. Actually, I spoke with, I talked to her on Friday, and initially when I started doing the investigation on the properties, this wasn't even a consideration because of the fields. So I spoke with Kate, and she said that she thought that there was going to be a portion that was too wet and had, for the time, put it to sleep and put it in the file. So she gave me the information and said, here, go for it. See if you can, maybe somebody can get a better use out of it. After some discussion again the other day, she was all in favor of the thought of us using one portion and potentially them using the other. Having a shared use for the space. She hasn't talked to anybody else I know on the Parks Commission, but she did like the option because it would allow for the ability to, take care of that infrastructure portion and have our facility, maybe even create the parking over there, and still having the potential of them expanding fields up on the second portion.
I think that's a big advantage, is that, the part of that site cost for the fields is going to be a usable road to get up there. And so this becomes shared at that point. It looks to me, and yeah, you do have to talk to Park and Rec about it, but it looks to me like you end up with a shared road, you have a fire station, you still have fields. And the other advantage, of course, is that Park and Rec needs a place to expand their physical facility. And this presents that. This presents that opportunity in our plan. But I don't think it's the fire chief's job to plan out what we're going to do with 20 Foster Street and try to put that in his budget for a fire station. I think that's our job to say, okay, if we go with this scenario, then this opens up these many windows that we have to look at and deal with. But I don't think. The dialogue is important that he has that, but I don't think him factoring the cost of what somebody else would have to spend to rehabilitate 20 Foster Street really has a bearing on this.
Well, it's got to be part of the equation, because you're talking millions of dollars to do a renovation of an existing building. That's what I'm saying.
But if you're going to use the millions of dollars and
An
build a
increase
fire,
over what he's saying for a fire department, new firehouse. It's an increase, no matter how you look at it.
but if you
What
put,
happens to that Foster Street property is gonna cost a lot of money.
if you put the fire station on Foster Street, you don't have to consider that at all, because they're taking that building up to renovate it. What we're doing, if the station moves, is we're freeing up a piece of property for some other use, some other public use.
and to cost a lot of money to renovate it for that use. There's
And
no
only
ifs,
if we
ands,
want
or
somebody
buts
to
about
go
it.
there.
It's gonna be millions of dollars to renovate it, because they're not gonna use the old police station, because we know that's junk. He knows that the big barn out back where he's parking his apparatus is no good, so that has to be dealt with. All I'm saying is, it grows and grows. And when it starts to grow, it costs us as taxpayers more money. That's my concern.
That is a very valid point. You know, no matter what we do, whether we stay at that location, you know, we'll look at renovating that site. And at some point, you'll still have the same thing that we have growing now with Park and Rec as well as the COA looking for space and requesting space every year. We saw this as an opportunity of potentially growing and allowing an additional, you know, expansion of other departments.
This is all preliminary too.
Absolutely.
The first time.
This is just a matter of a few weeks old.
Yeah, it's the first cut of information, and frankly, it does invite input from the other departments that could be affected because if they're not, if the pieces don't fit together, then incurring the additional expense of developing the Morgan property for this use, yet not having a reuse proposal for the existing fire station.
And idle buildings do nothing but rot.
But one thing, Chief, when I read through your memo on Friday night, I happened to see Brian Richter afterwards at the Park and Rec, and I misunderstood something here where I thought you were saying that they didn't want fields at all. So when I asked him about it, he contacted Kate. I did get an email back from, not directly from Kate, but from Brian, and she had mentioned that she would, and bring it to the Park and Rec Commission, would take a look at the possibility of having a fire station and also fields out back, and not, we wouldn't be eliminating the possibility of losing all fields. And I know I'm jumping around here, but when I first read this, I was saying, why are we doing it? What's something that you had mentioned, what were the goals? As it went on, I'm finding out, I do see more possibilities with this, because we'd have to take a close examination of the money, obviously. And when are we gonna have that money available? That still has to come. But the one thing I did think of is that if the possibility was there to put a fire station, have the road put in, then it's a lot easier then for Park and Rec to have a field out back. So there's a lot of parts that fall in. Understand where you're coming from when you're talking about vacant buildings rot. We have to think about that, but there's so many avenues that we can be looking at right now that might be solutions to problems we're gonna have in 5 years and 6 years. So this is probably a good time to start looking at it. But obviously, we have to be concerned about taxpayers and your first comment too, so.
When I sent out that email saying, what are the goals and all this stuff, I really, I looked at that site and I said, what do they want to do that for? But the more I thought about it, and the more I felt it opened up possibilities. Because there's a need for a fire station, that's a critical need, we need to do that. But there's also an understanding that we have to expand in other places for council on aging, for Park and Rec, and the fields. And the more I thought about it, the more this looked like a way that all of that could happen.
I think there's some opportunities there to, investigate a little deeper, especially going in as a joint venture. If we had the ability to do the parks, to do the ball fields with the station, take advantage of, equipment and everything else on site. But again, it all comes down to the almighty buck. But
Let's not forget about Foster Street, the money that has to be spent in Foster Street. That's a big concern of mine, that's all.
Now, this property actually, in the corner of the area you have marked off of the field, that actually joins the fire station property at that point, correct?
No.
No? What's the field in between?
There's actually two fields in between there. The first one is, and I forget the name of the little farm that's right across from the Congregational Church.
You can see it in the photograph.
Yep, then if you go by this one, then there's the long field that goes all the way up, parallel to the proposed fields, and then the Harvey's field is directly behind the fire station.
I thought there was the corners sort of doing it, but I guess, no, I guess there's not so. Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually 3 separate fields in between before it gets to that location.
I know there's some residents here that probably would love to be heard about this.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, Jenna?
I had the pleasure of Scott actually showing me this space, and it's gigantic back there. I didn't realize there was so much space back there. So I think it's an interesting idea. I think it's something to further explore. And when you just take a look at the list of pros and cons here, when you pair up the pros of staying and the cons of using, you get 6. But the cons of staying and the pros of relocating have 18. So it seems like you got a 3-to-1 margin here on at least your assessment of it being a better choice, not just for the fire department, but for other services we offer in town.
Anything else on the board at this point? Open up to the public, just identify yourself if I recognize you. Any public comment?
Rick Finley, Beaverbrook Road. I've been looking at this for the playing fields, and I would suggest that we try to move the police station as close to Patriot as possible and preserve as many of the fields in the back as possible. I know we have wetland issues, but I think it's a very, very good idea. There's 3 wins there, freeing up the current site for one of the other buildings, a future building. I don't know if the library is still looking for possible expansion, but I think it's definitely worth looking at.
Yes.
Kim Ahern, 40 Foster Street. I really like the conversation tonight because it starts to be more of a real planning project that's not just about a building, just plop down here, we have a space in town, we own it, let's put it there. But it's that thinking that's more global, and what are these uses and how do they marry each other? How can one interface with the other? I think that's when you get a richer sort of town center, richer town in general. And I think the conversation tonight is really great. And I think the Morgan property is probably more suited for the fire station. We love having you guys so close to us, but you know, if it's going to but if it's going to grow in that way, it's probably not really historically appropriate for where the site is and where the present site is. There's so many opportunities. I don't think you have to worry that that building's going to be vacant. The libraries just, expand, they're just boxes, and, they're ready to move, and I think that would be a beautiful site for a library right next to Fay Park. So I think, that kind of study really needs to be looked at, and really, good job.
Anyone else?
Ron Pickett, 36 Foster Street. I came here tonight because I wanted to make a special plea for thinking broadly, like Kim has suggested. And I'm particularly concerned about the future of Fay Park and how we address that sliver of land that borders on it. Fay Park is just a jewel for the town. And I'd love to see us make a smart move about where to put the police station, and maybe thinking ahead about how to really put a wonderful treatment at the end there, library, park and rec activity. And so I think you've done a great job. I don't really need to add more to I think Kim suggested this is wonderful to be planning and thinking ahead. And we've got a wonderful resource there. This sliver of land where the fire department is now is going to be bordering the entrance to Prouty Community Woods, Prouty Woods. And this is an incredibly valuable piece of property for the town, and to be thinking about maybe better caring for it would be good.
South?
One thing that the chief said that should be overlooked is that the Morgan property is very difficult to build on if you need a septic system, because it is very wet, it is draining all the glacial till from that part of town. But since we now have a town sewer, a limited sewer, that passes through the property, it opens up that property to the use by the town in this manner in that time when maybe 2 years ago it would be very, very precarious at best to try to put a septic system there, but it's a non-issue. It's a non-issue from the perspective of the infrastructure of that property being able to handle a growing fire department.
So we have the capacity to,
Oh, yeah, and frankly, we never thought of it when we put the line there that we can use Morgan property as a town building line, so we just shit luck.
You just
over-designed it.
No, we've always had, in our design, we always had that the Foster Street property, and the design we have for the sewer capacity was of a growing campus there. Moving that campus to the Morgan property, it's just brilliant. Well done, Jim. Assistant Commissioner.
any other comments?
Ruth Leibowitz, 14 Foster Street. I'm thinking about the current fire station. It was started in 1947 as a combination of town offices with the side bay for the fire trucks. So I think if the fire station moves to the Morgan property, which gives them much more freedom to create a really functional, modern fire station, that the current building is really returning to the use that it was built for originally. And it allows, there's a possibility for possibly expanding parking, which is badly needed for events at Bay Park, if you took down the barns in the back, and also to make walkways over to pedestrian paths over to Bay Park. It could be a very good use for a smaller town department that doesn't have the intensive requirements, and I think enhance the value of some other town services.
I hate to admit this, but the first time I joined the Board of Selectmen, our meetings were held upstairs in that building floor.
By candlelight?
Oil.
They rode horses to get there.
Oh, I'm glad I brought that up.
Yeah.
Direction from the board.
I think, that, you know, that just to keep talking to the Park and Rec and see, I think you're onto something here, and I think the picture just got a lot bigger, but.
I will actually be literally going to the Conservation Commission when I walk out of this room.
So I'd request that other town departments, Keith, get some comments out of them, and if in fact that's, you know, the way that the board wants to go and the town is heading that direction, I personally, again, would like to see what it's gonna cost to deal with the Foster Street property.
And is there a significant reworking by the architects now configuring a new spot?
He had some just preliminary pencil scratchings, but yeah.
Which will
it
result
would-
in a bill,
It would be,
right?
it would
That's
be,
what I'm asking.
Well,
it would be a
not at
different
this
set of plans
point,
than what we've developed thus far.
Correct.
But the challenge is, I think, less for him, that, you know, you've got a lot, it's gonna be a lot easier
Clean slate.
to work with.
Basically.
You know, pick a fire station off the shelf and put it here in these dimensions, as opposed to doing significant reworking of an existing aged
Exactly.
structure.
Exactly.
It's a lot less of, you know.
The big thing now will be the site survey, to, survey the soils, have the wetlands marking, things of that nature, to realistically evaluate the site, to see what the options are, and to see,
Right.
what it's gonna take.
I think I was asking more about the idea of it, are we going to have a subsequent bill to pay to the architects?
No, nothing right now, no.
Yeah,
And-
eventually,
Yeah, no.
Eventually, but not relative to.
Well, we're in the feasibility stage now, with
Correct.
the preliminary design, and we're still within that.
Okay.
But we'd have to make a call on which direction you're going. You know, we're not gonna have them design two buildings.
No.
No, well, yeah, right. Some type of recommendation would need to be made, so that, I would imagine at some point soon, we'd have to say, okay.
But in that process, it's all, and Greg Carell is perfectly qualified to do it. It would help inform the other policy decisions that we have to piece together here, to see just ballpark, what are we talking about for the reuse of the existing fire station for other uses, just so that we have those numbers, because you have the pros and cons in words, but the pros and cons in dollars is also significant.
Absolutely.
Raccoons are over there.
This is disgusting.
Yeah.
We all set?
Great. Thank you.
Chief.
Thanks for the
Thanks.
update.
We'll
Thank
keep
you.
pursuing that then. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Good night.
You as well.
And now you know where all the town owned properties are.
So we're still on just the policy, right? That's it?
Yep,
That's
that's
it.
it. In minutes, and we're all set. What else on this, what other subjects are going to be bringing up with this?
Well, the code of conduct I want to talk about. We'll wait till Jenny gets
I
back.
have a lot of things I'd like to be adding to the code of conduct and ethics.
What I'd like to do is,
What is this? Let's go, start.
Number seven.
Number seven, okay.
we had a rewrite at one time. On the,
Sorry.
on the code of conduct, previously, we had discussions about changing it, and there was a rewrite. I think the town council took a look at it. Remember that, Keith? The code of conduct back a year or so ago?
Yeah, there was a proposal that was brought
Yeah.
forward, which the board discussed
So,
and did not.
could we get that?
Sure, yeah.
Before we get into this, I think I'd like to take a look at that, because I don't remember the exact wording. It was changing and modifying and updating the code of conduct.
Changing what's already here?
Yes.
And we've already done that?
No.
No, you didn't do it.
We didn't do it.
No,
We kinda
but
just
we had a discussion before.
Right.
There was language that was drafted, reviewed by town council, and which ultimately the board decided not to adopt.
Take up. No, I don't think we ever voted on anything. We just kind of let it fall by the wayside. There were no votes taken or anything like that. It was just
By the end of
discussion.
the discussion, it was clear there was not a majority to adopt that language.
Okay.
I remember that much.
I actually had a number of things that I wanted to add to the code of conduct, which would include some revamp wording about the purpose, the way the selectmen handle and act upon disclosures that come before us regarding potential conflicts of interest, nepotism, and sunset issues.
Sunset being what?
Former appointees and representing in front of other boards and stuff like that. And the last thing is to add penalty clauses where, to the degree we can legally, for people who violate the policies.
May I ask something as an aside to this process? I went through and I made margin notes and comments and crossouts and whatnot and additions. How exactly do we as a board, seeing as this is the first time I've been here to do this, how do we go about doing this? And do we just sort of go through and say, oh, I'd like to insert this here, and by the way, can we strike out that there? I mean, is this...
That would be the most manageable way to do it.
Okay.
So the purpose of tonight's meeting would be to have a further discussion of the areas that members would like to consider amending. But I think it would be helpful, though, if everyone could prepare if there's a specific list, a finite list, prepare that, get it to us, Jen and myself centrally, and then we can
Okay.
include that in the packet the next time.
Okay,
Yeah.
so are you interested in things like, when we're talking about individual people, because I do see you do the his, her, and the himself and herself, but there are places where it's in the third person plural. I mean, are you interested in those sorts of editorial comments, or are you not interested in those?
Well,
Whatever
now
you
would be
want.
the time to
Yeah.
do them.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Instead of it
I
is-
also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So there's some of that, there's also, I have just some questions as to whether things are done relative to the code of conduct. I know that the Board of Library Trustees adopted the Selectmen's Code of Conduct. However, I'm not sure if it's been something which there's been outreach to the other boards to say, this is our code of conduct and we'd like you also to adopt it. Historically, I mean, has
It
that?
was done at the time.
In
It was done at the time, and we
Okay.
had limited
Success.
participation from the other boards.
But not the library trustees.
Light and
I'm so
water,
proud of
you could
you.
always count on the library trustees. Light and Water Board adopted something similar, Park and Rec did, I think, and that may have been
I think there was one other elected town board that did. I don't recall which one.
I'll take a look, because we noted it on the town website.
Okay, so we're gonna do this now, or you'd like us to
Forward 'em up.
submit them?
Forward them up.
If you can.
I'm up at that?
I think it would,
No.
I think it would be-
Forward 'em up to Keith.
yeah, I think it would be helpful to get them in writing. I've got
Okay,
now,
fine.
just received one set in writing, which will
I see,
file
okay.
and
Sorry.
get to you all. It'd certainly be a more manageable way to make it through.
And have included in that package the other rewrite. would be-
Yeah, yes, okay.
So this is much like the goal-setting exercise where you'd like it in writing as to...
Get it in writing beforehand, we can try to at least identify where you're all talking about the same sections, and
Okay.
we'll go through it numerically.
That's awful. All right, and do we have a due date for this homework?
Okay.
May,
What?
You
May
just,
4th?
you just re-up for a 3-year term. So let's just say 2015 or 16.
16.
No, I'm on code of ethics too. I haven't read the things you put in, but when I take a look at this sometimes I just want to say it's common sense. I don't understand it's great that we have it, but it seems like sometimes we go overboard in some regulations and.
Yeah.
Put the common sense, see, pull it out, it's common sense.
New code of conduct, don't be a schmuck.
But it's like this, when you get it back from the state. it's-
Sometimes that's impossible.
And I don't know whether you call the state a number of times on ethics and things. I've had different answers from attorneys of the day.
Of course you do.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Which is the best day to call?
I know that.
When's the
Who's their
permissive attorney
Wednesday
answering?
It's all in how you word it.
Yeah.
And keep on calling till you get the answer you want.
That's it.
Okay, so Keith, do you,
That was a joke.
yeah. Keith, do we have a deadline?
This is why we need.
Well, yeah, the board's next regular meeting is November 19th. It was going to be a very busy night now because it's the classification hearing. Probably going to be December 4th, I think is the next.
Okay.
So,
We have plenty of time, Chuck.
so over,
Get that
over
all
Thanksgiving
marked
turkey.
Do
I think,
or tofurkey.
What?
Some of us don't eat
My-
birds.
my daughter, one of my daughters is a vegan, so I think that.
Yeah, that's terrible. Skip tofurkey.
But she can have chocolates.
Made it a tofu. Tofurkey.
Okay, moving on.
All right.
All we have left is minutes.
Oh, right. Let's get through those. Look at the time, folks.
So we'll plan for a
See,
meeting
Ted,
on December.
I know,
Yes,
right?
take this
Or
on.
it's you.
If Ted's watching, see what time it is?
Nice job, Mr. Knox.
Well
Look at-
done.
and
Yeah, I
then
read
she's-
something in here about how at any time the chair can be voted off and we can vote a new chair.
It is.
Can we do that
I
tonight?
saw that.
I know.
No,
December 2nd.
Any changes on the?
So second or fourth?
It's the 2nd. December 2nd will be your next meeting. I just checked the calendar.
Okay, yes.
Issues with the minutes, anyone, folks?
I didn't have any.
I didn't either.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the minutes for their meeting Monday, September 30th, 2013.
Second.
We moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Carries.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Yay!
I just need signatures. for
Ah,
one document that you voted
killjoy.
last week. I've already signed these.
All right, so these
It's
are
the,
due in
additional
February.
housing.